The clinking of champagne glasses echoed through the dimly lit restaurant. Soft jazz hummed in the background, blending with the murmured conversations of couples lost in their own worlds. But my world had already shattered. There she was, Emily, my wife of 13 years, laughing, glowing, her hand resting on the wrist of a man I had never seen before but knew all too well. I stood near the entrance, gripping the envelope in my hand, my heart drumming like a war drum. A slow breath. A practiced smile. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to flip the damn table, but I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. No, this was my moment. I approached their table, calm, composed. Emily flicked her gaze at me, and for a fraction of a second, something passed through her eyes, shock, guilt, maybe fear, but she masked it quickly with that smug smirk I had come to despise. "Logan," she said, feigning surprise as if she hadn't planned this whole spectacle. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, the kind of smile that unsettles a person, the kind that says, "I know everything." "Congratulations on your freedom," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. Her lover, some preppy-looking bastard with slicked-back hair and an expensive suit, arched a brow but said nothing. Emily hesitated before picking up the envelope, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. She opened it, her confident expression faltering as her eyes scanned the paper. And then silence. For the first time in months, she had nothing to say. No lies, no manipulations, just a blank stare at the DNA test results. My voice was steady. "You were so eager to leave, so desperate to build your perfect little fantasy. But before you run off with your Prince Charming, there's something you should know." Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. The color drained from her face, and I could see the wheels turning in her head, scrambling for an escape, an excuse, anything. "You see," I continued, lowering myself into the chair across from her, "I've known for a while now. The late nights, the sudden interest in working out, the way you started treating me like a ghost in my own home. I gave you every chance to come clean, Emily. But you didn't. You never do." Her lover, Daniel, if I remembered correctly, leaned in. "What the hell is this?" Emily's throat bobbed. "It's nothing," she whispered. "It's a mistake." "A mistake?" I let out a cold chuckle. "No, sweetheart. The only mistake was thinking you could keep this hidden forever." I leaned back, watching her crumble, savoring the moment. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the lies, the gaslighting, the years of manipulation. She had spent months making me feel like I was the problem, like I was losing my mind. And now, here we were. I took another sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch. "Go on, Emily. Tell Daniel what's in the envelope." She shook her head, her nails digging into the table, her chest rising and falling in rapid breaths. "Logan, we should talk privately." I smirked. "No, I think Daniel deserves to know. After all, you were so eager to build a future with him. It's only fair he knows the truth." I saw the exact moment she realized she had lost. The panic set in, her hands clenched into fists, her eyes darting around the restaurant as if searching for a way out. But there was none. I stood, adjusting my jacket. "Enjoy your celebration," I said, patting the envelope. "Looks like you got exactly what you wanted." And with that, I walked away, leaving her drowning in her own lies. Daniel grabbed the envelope before Emily could snatch it away, his eyes scanning the paper. His smug confidence flickered, confusion replacing it. "What the hell is this?" he repeated, this time more forcefully. Emily reached for his hand, desperation creeping into her voice. "Danny, don't." But he was already reading, his face twisting as realization set in. He looked up at her, then back at me, his jaw tightening. "Is this real?" he asked, his voice low, controlled rage simmering underneath. I simply nodded, watching as Emily squirmed, her perfect little fantasy collapsing right in front of her. "Logan's just trying to mess with us," she blurted, grabbing Daniel's arm. "He's bitter, angry that I finally left him. You know how he is." Daniel's gaze snapped to her. "No, Emily. I don't know how he is, but I'm starting to see exactly how you are." She flinched. I could see her mind racing, searching for the right angle to play, but she was slipping, and she knew it. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough for only the two of them to hear. "You see, Daniel," I said, letting every word drip with satisfaction, "Emily has a habit of lying. She's quite good at it. Lied to me for months. Lied to you too, I bet. But this." I tapped the DNA test results. "This doesn't lie." Emily shot up from her chair, knocking over her champagne glass. It shattered against the floor, the sharp sound cutting through the murmurs of nearby diners. "You son of a—" "Careful," I interrupted, my tone still eerily calm. You wouldn't want to embarrass yourself more than you already have." She was seething, her face twisted in frustration. I had never seen her like this, exposed, powerless. It was intoxicating. Daniel stood, his chair scraping against the floor. He stared at Emily like she was a stranger, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Tell me it's not true," he said, holding up the paper. "Tell me this is a lie, Emily." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she did what she always did when backed into a corner. She tried to turn the tables. "Logan, I knew you'd pull something like this," she spat, jabbing a manicured finger toward me. "You just couldn't handle me moving on. You set this up to ruin my night." I laughed, shaking my head. "Oh, Emily, you really haven't changed, have you? Still trying to manipulate your way out of everything." She turned back to Daniel, gripping his hands. "Baby, listen to me. He's doing this on purpose. He faked this." Daniel pulled away like her touch burned him. "Then let's do another test," he said flatly. "Right now. Let's prove him wrong." Panic flickered across her face. And that's when he knew. Emily stumbled over her words, reaching for another excuse, but it was over. She had lost. I straightened my jacket, letting out a long breath. "Well, this has been fun," I said, stepping back. "I'll leave you two to sort this out." With that, I turned and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Behind me, I heard Emily's voice, sharp and desperate. "Daniel, please, just let me explain." But no amount of explaining could fix this. She had built a house of lies, and now it was burning down around her. I walked out of the restaurant, feeling the cold night air hit my face. For the first time in months, I could breathe. My hands were steady. My heart, though still aching, didn't feel like it was being crushed under the weight of her betrayal anymore. I didn't turn back. Whatever was happening inside that restaurant was no longer my problem. Emily could try to talk her way out of it, spin her stories, shed a few tears, but the truth was laid bare now. And the truth had a way of destroying everything. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A message from an unknown number. "You think you won?" I didn't need to guess who it was. Emily. She must have grabbed someone else's phone since I had blocked her the second I signed the divorce papers. I didn't reply. There was no point. Another buzz. "You're pathetic, Logan. You always have been. That's why I left you." I smirked. If I had been weaker, maybe this would have gotten to me. Maybe I would have let her words claw at my mind, make me question everything. But not anymore. A third message. "You'll regret this. I promise you will." That one almost made me laugh. What was she going to do? Lie some more? Ruin my reputation? She had already taken everything she could. I slid my phone back into my pocket and kept walking, heading toward my car. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a figure stepping out of the restaurant. Daniel. He was standing on the curb, phone in his hand, staring at the screen like he was trying to process something. Curiosity got the better of me. I leaned against my car, watching. He ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders tense. Then, slowly, he turned his head and met my gaze. For a second, we just stared at each other. Two men. Two idiots who had fallen for the same woman. Finally, he walked over, stopping a few feet away. "She's insane," he muttered. I exhaled through my nose. "Yeah." He glanced back at the restaurant. "She's still in there. Crying. Trying to tell me it's not what it looks like." He let out a humorless chuckle. "It's exactly what it looks like." I studied him. He looked like a man whose entire world had just been flipped upside down. I knew that look. I had seen it in the mirror every day for months. "She does that," I said. "Lies. Manipulates. Makes you feel like you're the crazy one." He nodded slowly, rubbing his jaw. "I thought she loved me." I shrugged. I thought the same thing. Silence settled between us. It was strange, standing here with the man she had left me for. But there was no anger anymore, no resentment. He had been just as blind as I had. Daniel exhaled, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his car keys. "I think I'm going to disappear for a while." He glanced at me again. "You good?" I thought about it. And for the first time in a long time, I actually was. "Yeah," I said. "I am." He gave me a nod before heading toward his car. I watched as he drove off, leaving Emily behind. I got in my own car and started the engine. No regrets. No second thoughts. Just a clean break from the woman who had spent 13 years turning my life into a lie. As I pulled onto the road, the streetlights blurred past me, casting long shadows over the city. My mind should have been racing, playing back every moment, every lie, every excuse she had fed me over the years. But instead, there was nothing. Just a strange, empty kind of peace. I had spent months thinking that when this moment came, I'd feel broken, angry, lost. But now, as I drove through the quiet streets, all I felt was relief. Then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. I let it ring. A minute later, another call. Then a message. Pick up the damn phone. I sighed, gripping the wheel tighter. I shouldn't have answered. I should have just kept driving, ignored her, let her drown in the mess she created. But some part of me, maybe the part that still wanted to see just how low she'd sink, made me press the answer button. The second the line connected, her voice hit me like nails on glass. You think this is funny, Logan? She hissed, her breath ragged. Humiliating me in front of everyone? Was that your little revenge plan? I stared at the road ahead, my voice flat. No, Emily. That was just the truth finally catching up to you. She let out a sharp laugh, but there was no humor in it. Just venom. You were such a petty little man. You knew our marriage was over. You knew I wasn't happy. And instead of handling it like an adult, you pull some pathetic stunt like this. I clenched my jaw. You think cheating on me for months was handling it like an adult? Silence. Just the sound of her breathing through the receiver. Then, softer this time, almost pleading. Logan, listen. I messed up, okay? I got caught up in something, and I didn't know how to stop it. But you didn't have to do this. Not like this. I shook my head. You have no idea how many times I wanted to believe you, Emily. How many times I told myself that maybe I was the one overthinking. Maybe I was the one being paranoid. But deep down, I always knew. I just didn't want to see it. She sniffed. Was she actually crying? You don't understand, Logan. You never tried to understand. You just let things fall apart. My grip tightened on the wheel. No, Emily. You burned it down. Another silence. Then, barely a whisper. So that's it? You're just done. I exhaled slowly. I've been done for a long time. I just didn't realize it until tonight. She didn't respond right away. Then, in a voice so sharp it cut through me like a blade, she spat. You're going to regret this. I let out a quiet laugh. No, Emily. The only thing I regret is wasting 13 years on you. I hung up, and this time, I didn't look back. The moment I ended the call, it felt like I had slammed the final door shut on everything Emily had ever been to me. No more games. No more second-guessing. Just silence. And damn, it felt good. The city stretched out ahead of me, empty roads and flickering streetlights guiding me home, though home didn't really feel like the right word anymore. The house, the bed, the life I had shared with her, all of it felt tainted now, like a place where ghosts whispered reminders of my stupidity. I pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the front door, trying to decide if I even wanted to step inside. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A figure standing near the porch. I tensed, my mind flashing to every worst-case scenario at once. Emily? Had she seriously followed me here? Or maybe Daniel, still trying to process what the hell had just happened? But as my headlights caught the silhouette, I realized it was neither of them. It was a woman, not Emily. She stood with her arms crossed, shifting her weight from one foot to the other like she wasn't sure if she should be here. The second I stepped out of the car, she looked up, and my chest tightened. Ashley, my best friend's wife. Well, ex-wife now. We hadn't talked in months. Not since her marriage had blown up in a mess of betrayal almost as bad as mine. Her eyes scanned me, taking in whatever she saw on my face. Then, with a small, knowing smirk, she said, Guess I'm not the only one who's single now. I let out a breath, running a hand through my hair. What are you doing here, Ash? She shrugged, glancing at the house. Figured you could use a drink. I hesitated. The last thing I needed was another complication, another emotional mess. But then again, maybe she was right. I stepped aside, nodding toward the door. Come in. She smiled and followed me inside. And for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about Emily at all. I locked the door behind us and tossed my keys on the counter. Ashley followed me into the kitchen, her heels clicking against the tile, her eyes scanning the place like she was searching for something, maybe signs of Emily still lingering in the air. She wouldn't find any. I had already erased her. Ashley leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me as I pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. She looked different from the last time I'd seen her, sharper somehow, like a woman who had been through hell and come out the other side just a little colder, a little wiser. She took the glass from my hand and studied me. You look like you just committed a murder. I smirked. Worse. I told the truth. She raised an eyebrow, taking a sip. That bad, huh? I sat down at the table, rolling the glass between my fingers. She was celebrating with him, you know. Our anniversary was last week, and tonight she was out toasting her freedom with some asshole she's been screwing for months. Ashley didn't look surprised. She had been in my position once before. After all, did you destroy her? She asked, tilting her head. I let out a dry chuckle. Oh yeah, DNA test. Right in front of her new guy. Completely nuked the fantasy she built. Ashley exhaled, shaking her head. Damn. Wish I could have seen that. Me too, I admitted. But honestly, I thought I'd feel more. I don't know, satisfied. She nodded, taking another sip. Yeah, turns out revenge doesn't really heal anything. I looked at her. What does? She was quiet for a moment, then gave a small, bitter smile. Still trying to figure that out. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, not heavy, just two people sitting in the wreckage of their lives, trying to make sense of it. Then Ashley set her glass down and leaned forward slightly. So what now? I exhaled through my nose. Now, I thought about it. About Emily. About everything I had lost, and everything I had just freed myself from. Now, I stopped wasting time on someone who never deserved me in the first place. Ashley watched me for a long moment, then smirked. I like that answer. She reached for the bottle, refilled both our glasses, and raised hers in a silent toast. I clinked mine against hers. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't drowning anymore. The whiskey burned on the way down, but it was a good burn, the kind that reminded me I was still here, still breathing, still standing despite everything. Ashley sat across from me, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass, her expression unreadable. You ever think about what you'd say to her if you had one last chance? She asked suddenly. I scoffed, leaning back in my chair. Emily. She nodded. I thought about it for a second, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Yeah, I admitted. I'd tell her I hope she finally finds whatever the hell she was looking for, because it sure as hell wasn't me. Ashley tilted her head, considering that. You think she regrets it? I let out a humorless chuckle. Emily? Regret? No. She only regrets getting caught. Ashley smirked, tapping her glass against mine again. Cheers to that. We drank. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just two people who had been through the same war, sitting in the aftermath, trying to figure out what came next. Then Ashley sighed, setting her glass down. You know, it's kind of funny. What is? She glanced at me, a knowing look in her eyes. You and me, sitting here, drinking over our exes. I smirked. Funny isn't the word I'd use. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. No, I guess not. She stood, walking over to the sink, running her fingers over the counter as if testing its realness. This house feels different without her in it, she murmured. I exhaled. Yeah, feels better. Ashley turned to face me, arms crossed, her eyes sharp. So what now, Logan? You gonna be one of those bitter divorces who spends the next 5 years talking about how she ruined your life? I smirked. Nah, she doesn't get any more of my time. Ashley studied me for a long moment, then nodded approvingly. Good. Because if there's one thing I've learned from all of this. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. People like them? They don't deserve to live in our heads rent-free. I leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with her. And what do people like us deserve? She didn't blink. A fresh start. For the first time that night, something shifted in the air between us. It wasn't just shared pain anymore. It was something else. Something neither of us were ready to name. Ashley let out a slow breath and reached for her coat. I should go. I nodded, standing up as well. You sure? She hesitated, just for a second. Yeah. I walked her to the door. She turned before stepping out, meeting my gaze one last time. You're gonna be okay, Logan. I nodded. You too, Ash. And then she was gone. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty doorway, the quiet hum of the night settling around me. For the first time in 13 years, I was alone. And for the first time in 13 years, I wasn't afraid of it. The house was silent after Ashley left, but it was a different kind of silence, one that didn't suffocate me, didn't make me feel like I was waiting for the next lie to drop from Emily's lips. It was just, still, peaceful. I walked back to the kitchen, grabbed the whiskey bottle, and poured myself one last drink. I should have gone to bed, but sleep wasn't coming anytime soon. My mind wasn't racing, it was settling, piecing itself back together after being shattered for so long. I took a slow sip and leaned against the counter. Then, as if the universe wasn't done testing me, my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it at first. I already knew it was Emily, but curiosity got the best of me. One new message. You think you're done with me? We'll see about that. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Of course. She wasn't the type to let go easily. Not because she loved me. Not because she wanted me back. But because people like her needed control. She had lost it tonight, and that scared the hell out of her. I put my phone face down on the counter and took another drink. Let her text. Let her scream into the void. I wasn't answering. Not tonight. Not ever. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. Not great. Not magically healed. But lighter. I got out of bed without that familiar weight pressing down on my chest. No dread. No second-guessing myself. I showered, made coffee, and sat on the back porch, letting the morning air clear the last remnants of last night from my head. Then my phone buzzed again. I groaned, assuming it was Emily back at it, but when I checked the screen, I frowned. A different number? A local one. I answered. Logan? It's Daniel. I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. What's up? A pause. Then, in a voice that was eerily calm, he said, We need to talk. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. I sat up straighter. What's going on? Another pause. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. It's about Emily. I gripped the phone tighter, my heartbeat picking up. What about Emily? Daniel exhaled, the sound heavy, tired. She showed up at my place last night after you left. Of course, she did. I ran a hand down my face. Let me guess, she gave you some sob story? Said I manipulated you, faked everything, tried to make you feel sorry for her. Yeah, he admitted. At first. Something in his voice made me sit up straighter. And then, a long silence. Then, quietly, and then she lost it. I frowned. What do you mean lost it? Daniel hesitated, as if trying to decide how much to say. She was drunk. Furious. Started throwing things, screaming about how you ruined everything, how she deserved better. She wouldn't leave. My neighbors ended up calling the cops. I blinked. The cops? Yeah, he muttered. She wasn't exactly cooperative when they got there. I let out a low whistle, shaking my head. Jesus. Emily had always been manipulative, always played the victim. But this was new. Daniel sighed. She spent the night in a holding cell. I guess they let her out this morning, but... He trailed off, like he wasn't sure how to say what came next. But what? You need to be careful, Logan, he said, his voice dead serious now. She was saying some crazy shit about you. Stuff that didn't make sense. She's not just pissed, she's obsessed. I stiffened. Obsessed how? Daniel lowered his voice. She said she's not going to stop until she makes you regret what you did to her. A slow, cold feeling spread through my chest. This wasn't just a bitter ex trying to save face. This was something else. Something worse. I stood up, pacing the length of my porch. You think she's actually going to try something? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. But I do know she's not done with you. I exhaled through my nose, gripping the phone. Emily had already taken 13 years of my life. She wasn't going to take any more. Thanks for the warning, I said finally. But I'm not scared of her. Daniel let out a humorless laugh. Yeah? Maybe you should be. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, staring at it for a long moment. Then I looked out at the empty street, scanning the parked cars, the corners, the shadows. For the first time since this all started, I felt it. That creeping sensation. Like I was being watched. I stood there, phone still in my grip, scanning the street. The rational part of my brain told me I was being paranoid. Emily wasn't lurking in the bushes, waiting to jump out at me. But after everything, after Daniel's warning, the unease gnawed at me like a slow poison. I took a deep breath and forced myself to walk back inside. I wasn't going to let her get in my head. Not anymore. I went through the motions of my morning showering, getting dressed, making coffee, but everything felt off. Like a shadow was following me, just out of sight. Then, just as I sat down to check my emails, my phone buzzed again. Emily. A text. I'm not done with you. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Then another. You think you won, Logan? You think this is over? It's not. You have no idea what's coming. I exhaled slowly, deleting the messages without responding. Let her scream into the void. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a reaction. But as I set my phone down, something caught my eye outside the window. A car. Parked across the street. It wasn't one of my neighbors. And it hadn't been there when I came outside earlier. I stood up, moving to the window. The car was dark, tinted windows, engine off. Just sitting there. Watching. My fingers twitched toward my phone, but I stopped myself. Calling the cops would make me look paranoid. And maybe I was paranoid. Maybe it was just some random car. But after Daniel's warning, after those texts, I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. I grabbed my keys and walked out the front door, making sure to move casually, like I wasn't paying the car any attention. I strolled down my driveway, pretending to check my mailbox. Nothing. Then, just as I started walking back, the car's engine roared to life. And it sped off. I watched it disappear down the street, my pulse hammering. Emily, this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I stood there, watching the empty street long after the car had disappeared. My gut told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't random. This was Emily, or someone working for her. I exhaled sharply and walked back inside, locking the door behind me. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. She was escalating. She had lost control of the narrative, lost her grip on me, and now she was scrambling, trying to regain power in the only way she knew how: manipulation and intimidation. But I wasn't the same fool who had spent years believing her lies. I sat down at the kitchen table, my fingers drumming against the wood. I needed to get ahead of this. I opened my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Detective Callahan. We weren't friends, but we had crossed paths before, back when my buddy Alex went through his own divorce from a wife who thought irreconcilable differences meant trying to take everything he owned. I hit call. 2 rings. Then a gruff voice. Callahan. It's Logan Carter, I said. I need some advice. A pause. Emily. Yeah. She finally snapped? Something like that. Talk. I told him everything: Daniel's warning, the texts, the car outside. Callahan listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he sighed. She's not just pissed, he said. She's unraveling. I ran a hand through my hair. Yeah, I got that. You want my advice? Document everything. Every message, every call, every weird thing that happens. If this keeps up, we can start building a harassment case. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. And if it escalates? Then we have enough to get a restraining order before she does something stupid. I clenched my jaw. She already has done something stupid. Then don't let her make you do something stupid in return. I exhaled. Got it. Good. Keep me updated. The call ended. I set my phone down, staring at it for a long moment. Emily wanted me to react. She wanted me to lash out, to get angry, to play into whatever twisted plan she had brewing in her head. I wasn't giving her that satisfaction, but I was going to be ready. Let her come. I'd be waiting. The next few days passed in a slow, tense blur. Emily hadn't called or texted again, but I knew better than to think she had given up. The silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. She was waiting, planning, trying to figure out her next move. I documented everything, just like Callahan told me. Every unfamiliar car that parked near my house. Every phone call from an unknown number. Every little thing that felt off. But the real hit came 3 nights later. I was asleep when the sound of shattering glass ripped me awake. My body reacted before my brain could catch up. I bolted out of bed, grabbing the baseball bat I kept by my nightstand, my heart slamming in my chest. Another crash. The sound of something heavy hitting the floor downstairs. I moved fast, my footsteps silent as I crept toward the staircase. The living room light was on, someone had flipped the switch. And then I saw her. Emily. Standing in the middle of my house, barefoot, her eyes wild. A broken lamp lay at her feet, shards of glass glittering in the dim light. My grip tightened around the bat. What the hell are you doing? She turned to face me, and for the first time since all of this started, I saw it. She wasn't just angry. She was unhinged. You ruined my life, she whispered. I let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Are you serious? You think you can just walk away? She hissed, stepping closer. You think you can just humiliate me, destroy everything, and live your life like nothing happened? I know I can, I said flatly. Her face twisted. You don't get to win, Logan. You don't deserve to win. She lunged for me. I moved before she could reach me, stepping back, keeping the bat between us. Emily, get out of my house. She laughed, a broken, hollow sound. Or what? You gonna hit me? You gonna be that guy? I shook my head. No. But the cops will drag your ass out of here if you don't leave now. Something flickered in her eyes, realization, maybe. She was cornered. She had no power here. Then, suddenly, the fight drained out of her. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. I loved you, Logan. I met her gaze, my voice calm, final. No, Emily. You love control. Her jaw clenched. For a second, I thought she might try something again. But then she turned, storming toward the door. She paused before stepping outside, her hand gripping the frame. "This isn't over," she muttered. I didn't reply. I just watched as she walked out into the night. I locked the door behind her. And this time, I knew she wasn't coming back. The restraining order was easy to get after that. Callahan handled everything, and within days, Emily was legally required to stay the hell away from me. Daniel moved out of the city. He wanted a fresh start, somewhere without Emily's shadow hanging over him. I couldn't blame him. As for me, I was finally free. No more lies. No more manipulation. No more wasting my life on someone who never deserved it in the first place. And for the first time in 13 years, I wasn't just surviving. I was living.